LiberalViewer presents.
So welcome to the May 29th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out 20 of the weekend's best, most newsworthy, most informative clips for what should be a really educational, fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. As usual, my clips come mostly from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. I'll also have a little bit of political comedy from Friday night's Real Time with Bill Maher. I think 4 or 5 clips peppered in amongst the other ones. You can see the 4 topics I'm covering listed down in the video description, and if you're watching the recorded version of the show, you should see time indexes down there so you can skip between the topics or go back to the beginning if you want to watch one over again. Also, if you're watching as a live or recorded show, I put a link down in the video description to this clip list that I use of the 20 clips I'm using and the kind of cryptic notes I use to remind myself of what's in the clips, and you might be able to decipher those, you might not, but you should at least be able to tell the network and who's talking in each of the clips if you want to follow along or try to skip to a clip that most interests you and my commentary on that clip, of course. The 4 topics I'm covering, like I said, are listed down in the video description. The first 2 are, as usual, the 2 sides of the 2016 presidential campaign. First, the Republican side, then the Democratic side, although there are a couple clips in there that kind of cover the entire campaign. Then I'll have one quick clip on Memorial Day and this question I had on a casualty list they were posting on NBC's Meet the Press. And then finally, I'll have one clip at the end from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, Overtime, where he seemed to have a chance to really discuss whether there was too much political correctness amongst liberals on college campuses with a professor at a college campus, Melissa Harris-Perry, and he decided not to go for it, and I will discuss that at the very end of the program. But first, like I said, I want to start with the 2016 presidential race, and of course, the Republican side I'm going to cover first, and I always like to start with political comedy, and that's not going to be any different tonight. I would like to start with the branding that Bill Maher tried to get started on Donald Trump. This is actually kind of a follow-up to a sexist joke he made about Donald Trump a few weeks ago, and then followed up on the next week, and I even made a video out of it comparing the sexist joke of Bill Maher to Jon Stewart, making sort of the same analysis of Donald Trump without the sexist joke when he talked to David Axelrod at the University of Chicago a couple weeks back. But with all that introduction, I will go to the branding of Donald Trump by Bill Maher in his monologue last night over here.
All the candidate. We invited Trump and Hillary. Trump did not come because he is a whiny little bitch. Let's remember. And remember to keep tweeting that with the hashtag whiny little bitch. We need to brand him like he brands everybody else. Whiny little bitch. He's a whiny little bitch. Whiny little bitch. Okay.
So I can't say I would be completely upset if that caught on as the branding of Donald Trump. I don't think it will, although I do think there is sort of a sexist undertone. And of course, for those of you who watch my show, you know, there is someone who could rightly be called a whiny little bitch, who is a frequent guest on my show, and I wanted to show you, especially when she wants to try to go outside, as I will show you over in this clip. So Sandy, of course, is the real whiny little bitch. I thought I would share that with you because, of course, when I hear that branding of Donald Trump, that's the first thing that comes to my mind because I have to deal with that like about 1 billion times a day whenever Sandy wants to go in or outside of the house. And so I think whiny little bitches can be a real problem. And so that's why I guess I wouldn't be sad if that were the branding of Donald Trump by Bill Maher, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I'm going to do one more Bill Maher joke before I get to the real news coverage. This is Bill Maher's coverage or joke about a group of writers that put out a petition against Donald Trump, and I will discuss that after you watch that clip over here.
And listen to this, 400 writers, including Stephen King, put out an online petition trying to stop Trump. What does this say when the guy who wrote The Shining and Pet Sematary says, this guy scares the shit out of me? What? And you know,
I did like that joke. It was kind of predictable once he mentioned Stephen King. Although the one thing about it, when I heard Pet Sematary and The Shining, he didn't mention the Dead Zone. And of course, Donald Trump is like very close to Greg Stilson, although Greg Stilson was at least a senator before he ran for president. So Greg Stilson would actually be a better president than Donald Trump if you look at it that way. And anyway, having shown the two jokes there from Bill Maher's monologue, I'll show a couple more clips from Bill Maher. I think 2 or 3, I can't remember, later in the show. But I want to get to the actual news coverage. And one interesting thing, I'm going to juxtapose some news coverage from NBC and from ABC. They both covered what happened this last week as the battle of the negatives between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. First, I'm going to show how Chuck Todd handled it. Then in between, I'm going to show a couple clips of Marco Rubio for reasons I will explain after you watch this 3-minute clip from Meet the Press this morning where Chuck Todd explains what's been going on this last week in the context of this battle of the negatives between Trump and Clinton here.
That every year, some people are upset with the major party choices that they have for president. And it's always this hold your nose business, lesser of two evils, and we push through it. But how did we get here? How did we get to the point where on one side, Hillary Clinton would be the most unpopular nominee in history, if not for the fact that Donald Trump is even more unpopular? There are many possible answers to that question, but it's undeniable that this week both candidates seem to be doing whatever they could to make matters even worse. And while we're all asking, what does this mean for November? Maybe we should start asking, what does this mean for January?
Thank goodness for emails. I love emails. Frankly, what Hillary has done is criminal, folks. It's criminal.
Donald Trump harping on the Clinton email scandal that just won't go away. This week, a State Department Inspector General said Hillary Clinton did break the rules, that she never asked for permission to use a private server and would have been denied if she had. The report contradicts what Clinton has said before and since.
Well, it was allowed, and the rules have been clarified since I left about the practice.
The problem for Trump? He has his own transparency issues.
My question is really simple. If you have paid federal income tax, show us.
Just 19% of voters give Clinton good ratings for being honest and straightforward. But even fewer say Trump has the right temperament to be president. Trump is putting Clinton's vulnerabilities on display.
Hillary is a disaster, folks. She has bad judgment. That was said by Bernie Sanders. He's given me a lot of my best lines.
And Trump is trying to drag the Clintons back into the 90s, reminding voters of Bill Clinton's affairs and sexual misconduct.
Nobody, perhaps in the history of politics, was worse to women or abused women more than Bill Clinton.
But Trump has had his own affairs.
Can you imagine how controversial that'd be? You think about him with the women. How about me with the women?
This week, Trump exposed Republican divisions, mocking his party's most prominent Latina politician, New Mexico Governor Susana Martinez.
She's not doing the job. Hey, maybe I'll run for governor of New Mexico.
And infighting within his own campaign, firing his recently hired political director. Still, so far, Trump appears to be a candidate coated in Teflon. Not so much for Clinton. One difference is how each candidate deals with their vulnerabilities. Trump almost embraces the attacks.
I end up with a lawsuit, and it ends up in San Diego in federal court. And I figure, what the hell? Why not talk about it for 2 minutes? Should I talk about it? Yes?
While Clinton struggles to explain.
The information that we had is out there. It's been clearly public, and my email use was widely known.
Bernie Sanders, of course, is...
And I'll show those Bernie Sanders clips that Chuck Todd went to, the Bernie Sanders interview after that news report. But I thought it was kind of interesting the way they talked about the battle of the negatives, but they didn't really talk about the role that the media plays in playing up the negatives in the campaign. And that was one issue I wanted to show a clip from Senator Marco Rubio on, he was on CNN State of the Union with Jake Tapper. That was basically the entire show, almost, was a big, long interview with Senator Marco Rubio. I'm not sure why, but I took 2 clips from that, and this is the first one where he talks about how, first, you'll see at the beginning of this clip, he's talking about how the media focuses on the negative, and then Jake Tapper asks him about when he went negative, and he talks about that for a while and also ends with an attack on the media, which I think is interesting over in this clip.
How the media, and I don't mean this, it's very common for political people to attack media people, but it's just the way it is. Media is a business, and it's driven by ratings, and that's how based on your ratings is what you can charge your advertisers. And so this content is interesting content. It's different, and it's over the top, and it dries eyeballs and ears to hear what people are saying and see it. Donald understood that. So he said these outrageous things. If you respond to it, it's just giving more fuel to the fire. There'll be even more coverage about it. If you don't respond to it, then it's someone who's basically looking the other way. So you're kind of in a bind.
He is a con artist.
But crouched in a defensive position after a string of disappointing primary results, Rubio let loose on the stump.
Donald is not going to make America great. He's going to make America orange.
And made this memorable knock on the Republican frontrunner.
And you know what they say about men with small hands? You can't trust them. You can't trust them.
That, of course, led to Trump assuring us all at the next debate.
I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it.
In one way, you are responsible for an unprecedented moment in American politics when Donald Trump went on stage and assured the American people that there was no problem, regardless of the size of his hands, I guarantee you.
And you know what? And
to be fair to him, you raised that issue.
I did, and so, and I actually told Donald, one of the debates, I forget which one, I apologized to him for that. I said, I'm sorry that I said that. It's not who I am, and I shouldn't have done it. And I didn't say it in front of the cameras. I didn't want any political benefit. I'm not a candidate now, so I can say that to you. Not because of him, but because of me. I didn't like what it reflected on me. It embarrassed my family. It's not who I am. And you did it almost in a sense of, nothing, at this point, nothing is working. I mean, this guy is out there every day mocking people, saying horrible things about people. But if you respond to him, somehow you're hitting below the belt. And that was my sense of it at the time. What I didn't realize was, it isn't who I am. And if you're not being who you are, it doesn't come across well. And he could do that because for whatever reason he can do that. But I couldn't do that. It's not who I am. It's not what I do. And by doing it, I ended up hurting myself, not him.
What was the decision like to actually just kind of let loose and unleash and be...
There wasn't any meeting. Or anybody in my staff. It was kind of enough is enough. I mean, this guy's literally out there every day mocking people for their appearance, for this, for that. And someone, needs to stand up to this guy. Eventually someone's got to step forward and say, we're going to put an end to this. And had I not been a candidate, maybe that would have been the right thing to do. But in essence, I think it was... I don't think it cost me the election, but I most certainly don't think it helped us. And but here's the interesting thing. After I did that, for about 4 days, every one of my speeches was covered live on cable. They all broke in to cover my speeches in case I said something else. So, I don't know. I mean, what does that say?
Coming up...
And, of course, Jake Tapper doesn't answer that question, although he kind of laughed at it. And that was the point about the media that I wanted to make, that Marco Rubio both started and ended that answer with. And then in the middle, there was some interesting parts in there about how he actually apologized to Donald Trump for questioning the size of his whatever. And I kind of like the way that Jake Tapper never actually said the word penis in there, but he made it clear that we were talking about the presidential or the possible presidential penis in terms of the nomination. So I thought that made it worth showing that clip. And also it is a reminder of some of the negative things that Marco Rubio said about Donald Trump. He's like a charlatan and a huckster and all the other stuff there. But, of course, that's not stopping him from voting for Donald Trump and telling other people to vote for Donald Trump in this one other clip I wanted to show from this morning here.
When I interviewed you a few weeks ago was that you were going to honor your commitment to endorse the Republican nominee. You had signed that pledge, but that you weren't taking back anything that you had said during the campaign in terms of your concerns about him being erratic and more. Is that still your position?
Look, everything I said during the campaign I meant. But the again, the elections, I've spent my entire life telling people vote. You have to vote. You can't stay home. Often saying to people, at the end, it doesn't even matter who you vote for, just participate in the process, although I want you to vote for whoever I've tried to convince them to vote for. How can I now go around saying, don't vote, stay home, abstain? I respect people that have reached a different conclusion. I'm not criticizing them. Everyone here in this very unusual year is going to have to make their own choice moving forward. But in my view, I know this. Despite all my differences with Donald Trump, I have a better chance to get a conservative nominated to the Supreme Court with him than I ever will with Hillary Clinton. If the Senate and the Congress passes a law to repeal Obamacare, Donald Trump will sign it. Hillary Clinton will veto it. So if you talk about rolling back some of these damaging regulations to our economy, Donald Trump will support that. Hillary Clinton will oppose it. Those things matter. These are important issues.
Are you surprised?
And I actually agree with Senator Marco Rubio in the reverse there. I know there are a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters who say they're not sure if they're going to support Hillary Clinton, but listen to those issues that make Senator Marco Rubio say he's going to support Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, despite all the things he said about Donald Trump. Well, you don't want Marco Rubio to win on Supreme Court justices or repealing Obamacare, or I think the regulations he's talking about is like clean air and clean water. Those are the type of things that, or the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. Republicans will say they don't really want to get rid of clean air, just the regulations that protect clean air or clean water. So those are all good reasons why, if you're a supporter of Bernie Sanders, you should want to vote for Hillary Clinton if she ends up being the nominee. And I'm going to cover that in a few minutes. I saw a comment or a question from Turtle Tracks that I will show in a few minutes when I get to the Democratic side of the race in the comment section. I'm reading your live comments. I'm sorry for the live viewers if the video and the audio are out of sync, and hopefully that won't be true in the recorded version, even if I have to upload a different archive of the show. I don't know why that happened, but like I said when I showed the NBC Battle of the Negatives clip, there's also a similar one from ABC, which, just like the one from NBC, doesn't really take into account what Marco Rubio said about the media having some responsibility for the negativity of the campaign. But here's John Karl on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos that he guest hosted this morning, talking very almost in a... It almost seems like they plan to have the same... I mean, I don't think they plan to have the same topic, but it's the same battle of the negatives as their story over here.
Started the week off by making history, setting a new low as the two most unpopular presidential frontrunners since the dawn of political polling. And by the end of the week, they appear to have actually made it worse, both now facing real questions that cut to the core of their campaigns and whether they can unite their parties and the country this fall.
We got the nomination yesterday, right? So we have the nomination. So we're number one.
It was the week Donald Trump went over the top, hitting the magic number of 1,237 delegates to clinch the Republican nomination.
We've won the nomination. Big. By numbers that you can't believe. We were supposed to be in July in Cleveland fighting for our lives.
But it didn't exactly look like a victory lap. First, Trump continued to wage war on his own party, taking swipes at New Mexico's popular Republican governor, Susana Martinez.
We have to get your governor to get going. She's got to do a better job, okay? Hey, maybe I'll run for governor of New Mexico. I'll get this place going.
Then, more reports of campaign turmoil at Trump Tower, including the abrupt ouster of his recently hired political director. And Trump once again failed to secure the endorsement of the most powerful Republican in Washington.
What I'm most concerned about is making sure that we actually have real party unity, not pretend party unity.
Finally, rampant protests outside his rallies brought out the police in full riot gear. But it was Hillary Clinton who actually had the worst week. She's on the defensive against a scathing State Department Inspector General's report that says her email practices violated government policy.
The rules have been clarified since I left about the practice. Having said that, I have said many times it was a mistake.
And despite being just 73 delegates away from clinching the Democratic nomination, Hillary Clinton still hasn't put away Bernie Sanders in California, where the race is now statistically tied. Meanwhile, Sanders has set his sights on Trump, the two challenging each other to a debate before Trump bowed out.
And I say to Donald Trump, you're a big, macho guy. If you have any guts, come on down and let's debate the issues.
And joining us now, the chairman.
And I'm going to get to the chairman of the Trump campaign, Paul Manafort, in just a minute. And one of the reasons I showed that 2.5-minute clip from ABC's This Week is you'll see Jonathan Karl uses it as the lead into a question, this next question to Paul Manafort, about why it is that Donald Trump is attacking Republicans or having problems with Republicans like Mitt Romney and the governor of New Mexico, who you saw him attacking there. And then the second question that he asked him about is also from that clip about this supposed debate he was going to have with Bernie Sanders that didn't come to fruition. And I'll show both Paul Manafort and then Corey Lewandowski giving two contradictory answers on that one. But first, here's Paul Manafort's answer about the conflict between Donald Trump and other Republicans and why that's happening, talking to Jonathan Karl this morning here.
Of the Trump campaign, Paul Manafort. Mr. Manafort, thank you for joining us. And your candidate has now clinched the nomination earlier than anybody expected and setting a record in the process. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
But I want to ask you, even as he's done this week, Donald Trump went out and we saw he took a shot at Susana Martinez, criticizing her. Even Mitt Romney saying he choked like a dog, walks like a penguin. Took a shot at Jeb Bush still. What is the strategy here? Is any Republican who criticizes Trump or his policies going to be face this kind of fire?
No, this has been greatly blown out of proportion. I mean, Governor Romney, is jealous the fact that the first businessman to be nominated by the Republican Party with record numbers is Mr. Trump, and that with a chance of winning the White House. Romney had a chance to win it. He lost it. He sees that Donald Trump has not only won the nomination, he's won it with record numbers in the primaries, and he's now leading in some of the polls already. You know, the Governor Martinez thing, where the focus was on the wrong thing. Mr. Trump was talking about, as he does always when he goes anywhere, the problems in government that aren't working, that aren't helping the people. And he was talking about the welfare system and how it was out of control in New Mexico. And just as he criticizes issues in Washington, when he's in the States, he talks about things that need to be done to improve the situation for the voters and for the people, because that's why he's running for president. The fact that it was a Republican governor of New Mexico is not the point. The point is that the system was broken. If it was a Democratic governor, he'd have been saying the same thing. He's out there representing the interests and talking about what needs to be done and why, as president, he will change things and make people's lives better. That's what it's all about. Again, the media is trying to always find issues where there aren't issues. They said he couldn't, he was not a serious candidate. They said he couldn't achieve 30, 40, 50%. They said he couldn't win the nomination on the first ballot. They said he wasn't going to be able to win a general election. He wasn't going to be able to unite the party. All of these things are wrong. He's proven them all wrong in record time. Oh, okay. I mean, we clinched the nomination the first week in May.
So you know.
So that is a more professional campaign operative from the Trump campaign trying to clean up after Donald Trump, which I think we're going to be seeing a lot of between now and November. Paul Manafort there is saying basically the same thing that Corey Lewandowski said over on Fox News Sunday in a clip I'm not going to show because they're duplicative, where they both said, oh, he wasn't attacking the female Latina governor, a Republican governor of New Mexico, even though he needs to get female votes and he needs to get Latino votes. He wasn't attacking her. He was attacking the economy in New Mexico, and that he is worried about the economy everywhere. And that was basically Paul Manafort's answer there, which was the same, like I said, as Corey Lewandowski. But this next answer as to why he's not debating Bernie Sanders after saying he was going to debate Bernie Sanders is different from what Corey Lewandowski said. I'll show in a minute. Corey Lewandowski says, oh, he was just joking, even though if you watch the clips of him saying it over and over again, it's clear he was serious. And maybe that's why Paul Manafort couldn't say that, because Jonathan Karl starts off showing several of those clips where it's pretty clear Donald Trump was at one point serious about debating Bernie Sanders. I don't think he ever talked about dating Bernie Sanders, but he did talk about debating Bernie Sanders and then backed off for reasons that Paul Manafort explains differently than you'll see Corey Lewandowski explain in a minute. But here's Paul Manafort's explanation in this clip.
What happened with this debate that sure looked like it was going to happen between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders? Here's what Mr. Trump himself said earlier this week.
I want to debate him so badly. I'd love to debate Bernie.
Bernie's not going to win, but I'd debate him anyway if they wanted to put up money for charity.
Now suddenly we hear Donald Trump is unwilling to debate Bernie Sanders. What's going on? Is he afraid of facing off with Bernie Sanders?
he's not afraid to face off with Bernie Sanders. He's the Republican nominee now. The question should be, why is Hillary Clinton afraid to debate Bernie Sanders? She's the one in the Democratic primary with him. And the point Mr. Trump was trying to make was the Democratic system is rigged. It's been rigged from the beginning for Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders has been winning primaries and losing delegates. Now you've got California, a state where Clinton thought she was going to win. The race has gotten very close. Bernie Sanders wants to debate Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders should have that chance. Mr. Trump was saying, debates are important. He would have debated Bernie Sanders if Bernie Sanders were the nominee. But Hillary Clinton should be debating him today.
But at the very least, this is a flip-flop. I mean, you heard the tape. He said over and over again that he wanted to debate Bernie Sanders, and then suddenly it was
and
no.
he does, but
nothing changed.
He does, but what changed is he became he became the actual nominee of the party between the time he said it and the time it happened. But that's not the point. The point is Hillary Clinton is the one who should be debating Senator Sanders. Hillary Clinton is the one who is in the Democratic primary. When the general election happens, when there's a Democratic nominee, Mr. Trump will debate whoever emerges from the system.
Okay, so let's talk about the next.
So he was actually dishonest there at the end where he said, well, what changed is that he became he was the presumptive nominee. I mean, he hadn't put together 1,237 delegates before this week, but that was like in the middle of the story, he put together the number of delegates, and that really doesn't make any difference because he was already the presumptive Republican nominee last week. If you watched the Sunday Clip Roundup, or if you just watched the news, that's true. So that was dishonest, and you saw how Jonathan Karl followed up there and said, well, he said it was a flip-flop. He said it over and over again. You will not see that kind of follow-up in this next clip where Chris Wallace had on the campaign manager of the Trump campaign, Corey Lewandowski, asked him the same question and then just let him get away with saying, oh, Trump was just joking, without any real follow-up about all the times he said it or how serious he seemed in those clips you saw at the beginning of the ABC question. That didn't come up over on Fox News Sunday over here.
From Fox News in Washington. Well, it's been another roller coaster week for Donald Trump. He clinched the GOP nomination, appeared to sign on to a debate with Bernie Sanders, was targeted by President Obama, and attacked fellow Republicans, despite calls from party leaders to unify. Just another week in Trump world. Joining me now from New York is Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski. Corey, let's start with the highly anticipated Trump-Sanders debate. At first, Trump said he would love to debate Sanders. Then he backed out, saying that it was inappropriate to debate the second-place Democrat, which he knew Sanders was from the start. Here's what Sanders had to say about all that.
Trump claims to be a real tough guy, pushes people around. Hey, Donald, come on up. Let's have a debate about the future of America.
Corey, as the senator asked, what is Trump afraid of?
Well, so, hey, first, thank you for having me on. And second, I want to thank all of our veterans as we celebrate Memorial Day or remember Memorial Day. But as you know, that question that was asked of Mr. Trump was asked in jest during a Jimmy Kimmel interview. And he said, sure, if they want to pay me enough money as a joke, tongue-in-cheek, I'll be happy to debate Bernie Sanders. The bottom line is the Democratic Party is stealing this election from Bernie Sanders. The party bosses will not allow him to be the nominee. Hillary Clinton is going to be the nominee. And we are squarely focused on defeating Hillary Clinton come November. So for us, if Hillary Clinton isn't going to debate Bernie Sanders because he is not going to be the nominee, we are solely focused on making sure the American people know that Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States and lay out our vision for that. And we're not going to waste our time debating Bernie Sanders when he's not going to be the Democratic nominee.
All right. Trump wasn't just fighting
all right? That's all he says is all right? As you saw from the previous clip, his answer was totally dishonest. There was no way that Trump was joking. And by the way, the beginning of that clip, they showed Bernie Sanders on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. His entire interview, the entire Bill Maher interview with Bernie Sanders, is available on the Real Time YouTube channel. I put a link down in the video description. You can check that out. I took one clip that I'm going to show in a few minutes from that interview. It's not the clip where he talked about the Donald Trump debate, so you can watch that clip yourself later if you're interested. And so that's the last clip on the Republican side of the 2016 presidential race. Now I want to move on to the Democratic side, which includes 6 clips of Bernie Sanders, because he was on a couple programs And this first clip is one of those Bernie Sanders clips from NBC's Meet the Press. It starts with an introduction about what's going on in the race from Chuck Todd, and it also answers a question I saw Turtle Tracks asking down in the live comments during the show. Let me show that here. And you can see there it talks about whether Bernie Sanders should make a case to the superdelegates about his greater electability and lack of scandal. And you'll see Bernie Sanders kind of answers that a little bit in response to, first he's talking to Chuck Todd about what is his path to the nomination, and then he answers some specific questions about, or a specific question about the superdelegates over in this clip.
Is presenting himself as the more acceptable alternative to both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I got the chance to talk to him yesterday just after he held a rally in Santa Barbara, California, in advance, of course, of the June 7th California primary. And I began by asking him about his difficult path to the Democratic nomination. Let me start with a simple question, but maybe a complicated answer. How do you win? Senator Clinton has basically declared herself the nominee. The math is certainly very much in her favor. Explain to me how you're the nominee in July in your head.
Fair question. And I think we take there are three paths to victory. Number one, I want to go into the convention with more pledged delegates than Secretary Clinton. And that's going to be an uphill fight because we're 270 or so delegates down. We got 46% of the pledged delegates. What I want to do, and I think we can, is win California here and win it in a big vote, do very, very well in the other 5 states. And I believe going into the convention, if we can do this with a majority of pledged delegates, is a very symbolic victory. Second of all, we're going to talk to those superdelegates in states where we have won landslide victories, 60, 70, 80% of the vote, to say, do what the people in your state want. They voted for Bernie Sanders. You as a superdelegate should follow their wishes. Third point, and most important point, as you know, Chuck, there are over 400 superdelegates who came on to Secretary Clinton's campaign 8 months before the first ballot was cast, before anybody else was in the race, before they could get a sense of what the campaign was about. Right now, in every major poll, national poll and statewide poll, done in the last month, 6 weeks, we are defeating Trump, often by big numbers and always at a larger margin than Secretary Clinton is. We're going to make the case to the superdelegates. Your job is to make sure that Trump is defeated, that Bernie Sanders, in fact, for a variety of reasons, not just polling, is the strongest candidate.
Well, Senator, in your answer there, you're basically contradicting yourself on the issue of superdelegates in this way. You're saying you want them to respect the vote in their states. Then at the same time you say, but oh, by the way, for those of you that are a superdelegate in a state that Clinton won, why don't you think about the general election? It's a little bit hypocritical to be on both sides of those issues.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are over 400 superdelegates who made a decision to vote for Secretary Clinton before anyone else was in the race, before they got a sense of what the campaign was about. And all that I am saying is to those superdelegates who came on board before I was even in the race, you have got the very grave responsibility to make sure that Trump does not become elected president of the United States. Vote for the strongest candidate. And it's not just the polls, Chuck. If you look at the momentum and the energy and the enthusiasm of our grassroots campaign, it will result in a high voter turnout. And Democrats and progressives do well when the voter turnout is high. Republicans do well when the voter turnout is low. I think our message of income and wealth inequality, the fact that we're the only major country on earth not to have health care for all people, is resonating. It will win the general election.
Is it fair to say then, if you don't...
So you can see there Bernie Sanders' answer on the question, both of his path to the nomination, which it seems pretty narrow and very unlikely, but still not impossible, despite what some of the pundits seem to be saying these days, and also involves the superdelegates and kind of making an electability argument, as Turtle Tracks asked in that comment, And then on the question of the scandals, I wanted to show another clip from the NBC Meet the Press interview where Chuck Todd asked about something quoted in the New York Times from Bernie Sanders supporters, like hoping for an indictment of Hillary Clinton. And you can see how Bernie Sanders responds to that issue over here.
You have a problem when some of your supporters are quoted in the New York Times saying they're sort of rooting for an FBI indictment when it comes to Clinton? Do you tell your supporters not to talk that way?
The New York Times, I'll tell you, I have a real problem with the New York Times, which from day one has been trying to be dismissive of our campaign and be very negative about our campaign. You can go out and you can talk to millions of people and you get any, response that you want. We are going to defeat. Our campaign is about defeating Secretary Clinton on the real issues. I want to break up the Wall Street Bank. She doesn't. I want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. She wants $12 an hour. I voted against the war in Iraq. She voted for the war in Iraq. I believe we should ban fracking. She does not. I believe we should have a tax on carbon and deal aggressively with climate change. That is not her position. Those are some of the issues that I am campaigning on. That the New York Times goes around and they talk to a handful of people and do a front page story, that's a problem for the New York Times, not for my campaign.
All right, I want to ask you a little bit about the...
So that was Bernie Sanders' response on it was not, I'm sick and tired of hearing about the damn email, that I don't do a very good Bernie Sanders impression, but you remember the sick and tired of hearing about the damn emails from one of the first debates. Well, he also didn't really take the bait there, and he was asked in every single one of the interviews, even on Real Time with Bill Maher, and he basically gave the same answer that, he doesn't think the American people are that interested in the emails, even though there may be issues there. He's really more interested in the, economic inequality issues, the middle class working issues, and so that was a typical answer on the same question. But before I leave the issue of Hillary Clinton's emails, and you saw in some of those introductory clips on the news from both NBC and ABC that this Inspector General report came out and said that Hillary Clinton did violate the rules at the State Department and that she didn't seek approval. And so some of the things she said weren't quite accurate, but there still seems to be not enough for an indictment so far as I've seen, as my perspective as a criminal defense attorney anyway. But one of the things that was really amusing is one of the talking points that Hillary Clinton has been using and her surrogates and supporters have been using is that she did the same thing as previous secretaries of state, and especially Colin Powell. And Representative Adam Schiff, a Democrat from California, who's one of Hillary Clinton's surrogates, and he's also on the House Intelligence Committee. He was over on Fox News Sunday this morning, and he got into this epic battle with Chris Wallace that I'm going to show in two different clips because they were separated by the interview with the Republican senator. I'm not going to show any part of that, but it was basically about whether Hillary Clinton can use this argument that she used a private email just like Colin Powell did, and Chris Wallace was like loaded for this answer, and he got really upset when Representative Adam Schiff kept bringing it up anyway, even though you'll see in the second clip he brings it up himself after saying no more talking about Colin Powell. But here's the setup clip, and by the time you get to the second clip, I was actually laughing at some parts, but here's the setup clip from Fox News Sunday this morning here.
Concern, a superior instructed them this way. He instructed the staff never to speak of the secretary's personal email again. That's a quote from the OIG report. Congressman Clinton never got approval.
No, she was mistaken about that. She thought that it was approved, that the practice was allowed, and she was wrong. The report also makes clear that Secretary Powell also thought it was appropriate to use a personal server, private server.
Not true. That is not true, and I had a feeling you were going to call me on that, and let's discuss it right now.
I am going to call you on that.
Secretary Powell had two computers in his office. He used one, a government computer, for classified information. He had a separate computer for private emails. Some of those included business, State Department business, but he did have a separate office of the State Department, Secretary of State, computer?
He had a laptop, a State Department laptop, which the OIG report says he never used for email, not for official business.
That's not what Secretary Powell said.
The OIG report says that he used personal email exclusively for all of his official email business. And the OIG also says that when the Secretary Powell was asked to provide...
Let me ask you another question. Let me just ask you this, though. Did he ever use a private server?
He did use a private server. It wasn't his own private server. It was a server owned presumably by America Online. But he used exclusively a private server.
But you just said he had a laptop that was in the State Department.
Let me make one other point, which is I think, very critical, which is the OIG also found that the retention by Secretary Clinton of her emails, the fact that she provided 55,000 pages of emails, mitigated the fact that she used a private server. In the case of Secretary Powell, there was no mitigation. None of those emails were turned over. So the person who was Secretary of State during the decision to go to war in Iraq did not preserve any of his emails, one of the most consequential decisions in recent history. That, to me, is far more consequential than the fact that the Secretary did preserve them and turn them over.
When did Secretary Clinton leave the State Department?
I believe it was in 2012 or 13.
It was January of 2013. Do you know when she turned over the 55,000 pages?
After she left office, and she was
requested
by the State Department.
It was December of 2014. Yes. It was 2 years later.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right.
Okay, let me just bring in...
But let me ask you this, Chris,
I have to bring in Senator Langford. This idea of comparing it to...
and I'm not going to talk about what Senator Langford, he said, of course it's different what Hillary Clinton did from Colin Powell, which was the answer that apparently Chris Wallace wanted, because he definitely really wanted one answer. And like I said, that was kind of the setup. This next part, this is like the comedy routine. Like, I'm not asking you what the last Secretary of State did. I want to know who's on first. Or, well, I almost feel like, or like, woo, 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 woo. There's like all sorts of weird, like, little comedy noises that could be very well included in this next clip where you'll see Chris Wallace asks a different question and gets a Colin Powell answer that he is very upset about, and then inexplicably next asks a question that includes the name Colin Powell, and it's, I thought, funny. You can tell me what you think down in the comment section after you watch that clip here.
We had never heard about these attempted attacks until the IG's report, so that's new. 2, if the server was so secure, why did they have to keep turning it off? And 3, as Senator Langford points out, you don't always know if somebody has a successful attack because hackers don't leave fingerprints.
No, that's true. What we do know from the OIG report is that there were a couple attempts to hack into the system that were unsuccessful. So we don't know that there's any evidence of a successful breach. But I do want to get back to the point that I wanted to finish and that Senator Langford mentioned, and that is the comparison with Secretary Powell is...
Come on, can we... Wait, forgive me.
No,
forgive me.
You told me you would allow me to push back, and I want to push back.
I'm sorry. Hillary Clinton's running for president. Colin Powell is not running for president. The rules in 2004 were completely different. They're completely different guidelines. Sir, the guidelines were repeatedly strengthened in 2005, in 2006, in 2011. Hillary Clinton was operating in a different world. Can we please stay to the issue of what Hillary Clinton did or didn't do and not talk about Colin Powell?
Well, I know you don't want to talk about Colin Powell because
it's irrelevant to the issue.
It isn't irrelevant in this sense. If you please,
how can she say it was secure when they had to turn off the server because there were attacks?
Chris, the rules...
Could you answer my question?
I will. I will answer the question. She should not have used the private server. She's admitted she should not have used...
How does she know it was secure?
The private server. Look, we know from the OIG report that there were 2 attempts to breach the server that were unsuccessful. That's what we know. But please let me at least finish the point.
Not on Powell. Forgive me, I'm going to keep going. Well, we're done with Colin Powell.
I think it's very telling.
We're done with Colin Powell.
Okay.
Well, then we'll move on.
I think it's very telling, though, Chris, that there's no interest in anyone here but Secretary Clinton. That, to me,
really? Because she's the only one running for president.
Yes, but does that mean that other secretaries didn't use the same practice, that their practices are irrelevant
I think, first of all, we've shown that it is different, and secondly, I think it's frankly a red herring, sir, and I expect more from you. From the start, Clinton said that she would cooperate with any investigation. Here she is, just last month.
We made clear that I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have, and I stand by that.
But here is the Inspector General's report. All right, let's talk about Powell and Powell Standard here, Congressman. OIG interviewed Secretary Kerry and former Secretaries Albright, Powell, and Rice. Through her counsel, Secretary Clinton declined OIG's request for an interview. Congressman Schiff, what happened to answering anybody's questions at any time?
But now you bring up Secretary Powell.
Oh, come on. Yes. Did he agree to an interview? Why did he agree to an interview and Secretary Clinton not?
Okay. I don't know why Secretary Clinton...
Do you think she should have agreed to an interview?
I think she certainly could have agreed to the interview.
Should she have agreed to an interview?
She's going to be meeting with the Department of Justice, and if there are any remaining questions, she can answer them. But let me say this.
Why shouldn't she speak to the Inspector General of her own department?
Chris, you brought up Secretary Powell this time.
I brought it up in the fact that he spoke to them and cooperated with the investigation, and she did not.
You did not bring up the fact that when Secretary Powell was asked to provide whatever emails he retained or to work with the private provider of those emails to provide them, he did not respond and still has not responded to the IG. You did not bring that up.
Okay, so you know what? I'm not going to vote for Colin Powell for president this time. Senator Lankford, your reaction to the fact that...
I don't know. I thought that was extremely amusing, and I don't know what the real substance of the Hillary email scandal. I still see it as... I mean, I've said several months ago that as someone who does public records requests, I'm a little offended that she apparently went to these lengths to avoid having to provide her emails under Freedom of Information Act requests. She should have done her public emails on the public server, and then she could have used her private email for her private stuff. But it was a way to sort of like curate what ended up in the public record, I think. And the whole national security thing and the whole criminal prosecution, I find both those things pretty far-fetched. But if more evidence surfaces, I'm willing to re-examine and change my mind. But so far, I just see it as being secretive, especially regarding public records requests and wanting to have, obsessive control over what was released and what wasn't released. And I don't really want to talk much more about the email, so I'm going to move on to some more clips of Bernie Sanders talking about other issues beyond the emails. And one important issue where Bernie Sanders may or may not, well, I guess we'll see at the Democratic Convention in July, whether he moves the Democratic platform on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict slightly more towards the Palestinians. And that's kind of what came up when he talked to... This is one more clip from the Chuck Todd interview of Bernie Sanders, where he's talking about the platform committee includes some supporters of Bernie Sanders like Cornel West, and they've said some things that are to the left of previous Democratic platforms. And here's Bernie Sanders talking about that in this clip.
Platform and the Democratic Party issues platform that's coming up. A couple of your appointees, when it comes to the issue of Israel, including Cornel West, he refers to the Palestinians as the plight of an occupied people. Do you agree with his characterization?
What I believe is that the United States has got to be playing on a level playing field in dealing with Israel and the Palestinian people. I am 100% pro-Israel in the sense of Israel's right to exist. I lived in Israel. I have families in Israel. Israel has the right to live not only in peace and security, but to know that their very existence will be protected by the United States government. On the other hand, I think if we're looking at lasting peace in the Middle East, the United States has got to respect the needs of the Palestinian people. They cannot be pushed aside. So that is my view. And, other people can say whatever they want. That is my view.
What do you want the platform to say? Do you want to refer to the Palestinians as an occupied people? Do you want to say that Israel is occupying Gaza
we're a little
and the
bit
West
early. We're a little bit early about worrying about the wording of what the Democratic platform will be. We've got some good people on our platform writing committee. But I think that at the end of the day, there will be a general recognition by the entire Democratic convention that, of course, Israel's right to exist in peace and security is not in debate. But on the other hand, the Palestinian people's needs must also be respected. I have the feeling that while the media wants to make this into a great conflict, I think there's going to be broad consensus within the Democratic convention on that issue.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I mean, based on people I know on the left, just in my local area, I think Bernie Sanders may be a little too optimistic about the media being the one making this into a controversy, but it won't actually be a controversy at the convention. That sounds like it's one of the things that people could argue about for a long time, and which way it will go and exactly what language they're going to use. It may be premature now, but eventually someone's going to have to decide that issue, and it may be a real fight. That's a preview of something we might be covering in July, and hopefully I'll be able to do some good videos on the Democratic and Republican conventions in July. But I want to move on to this next quick clip of Bernie Sanders. Well, I have two clips of Bernie Sanders on CBS's Face the Nation. In this first one, it's Bernie Sanders talking about his reaction to Donald Trump and the debate. I used this one rather than the clip on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher because the interviews of Bernie Sanders on the Sunday morning shows actually took place Saturday from Santa Barbara, so they're more recent than Bill Maher's interview, and so I wanted to show the more recent answer on what he thinks about Donald Trump and debating Donald Trump. It's basically what he said in all the cases where he was asked this question. It's about 30 seconds long over here.
It looks like the debate with Donald Trump in California is not going to happen. Do you think he was ever serious about that debate?
Look, Donald Trump said he wanted to go forward, then he changed his mind, said no, then he changed his mind, said yes, then he changed his mind, and he said no. Maybe we'll get a call in 5 minutes where he'll say yes again. I think that is who Donald Trump is, and I think the American people should be very concerned about somebody who keeps changing his mind, not only on this debate, but on virtually every issue he's been asked about.
When Donald Trump said he wasn't going to participate.
And it's a kind of fun answer because it attacks Donald Trump. He didn't say, like, is he chicken? Is he man enough? Some of the more colorful language you'll see he used in the interview with Bill Maher. Like I said, the full 11 minutes is down in the video description. I put a link down there. You can watch it free on YouTube if you're interested. And I want to show one other clip from the CBS Face the Nation interview with Bernie Sanders, where John Dickerson asked Bernie Sanders about the other thing Donald Trump said when he decided not to debate Bernie Sanders. Donald Trump said something about how Bernie Sanders had been cheated by the Democratic Party, or it was all rigged, and I think Bernie Sanders has a fairly measured answer that Bernie Sanders supporters should listen to. And I consider myself a Bernie Sanders supporter, but I'm not one of those Bernie or bust, would never vote for Hillary Clinton Bernie Sanders voters. Here's how Bernie Sanders explains it himself to John Dickerson on Face the Nation this morning here.
That he wasn't going to participate in the debate. He said, quote, "The Democratic nominating process is totally rigged." He went on to say Hillary Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz will not allow Bernie Sanders to win. Do you agree with his characterization?
Well, I have been very touched by Donald Trump's love for me. But, John, in all due respect, I think there may be some aspect of this which he thinks will advantage himself. So I do appreciate his love and his compassion for me, but I don't really accept his words. Look, we knew when we were in this that we were taking on the entire Democratic establishment. No great secret about that. And yet we have won 20 states. We're in California right now. I think we have a good chance to win here. I think we have an uphill fight, but there is just a possibility that we may end up at the end of this nominating process with more pledged delegates than Hillary Clinton. What has upset me, and what I think is, I wouldn't use the word rigged because we knew what the rules were. But what is really dumb is that you have closed primaries, like in New York State, where 3 million people who were Democrats or Republicans could not participate, where you have a situation where over 400 superdelegates came on board Clinton's campaign before anybody else was in the race, 8 months before the first vote was cast. That's not rigged. I think it's just a dumb process, which has certainly disadvantaged our campaign.
You're going to try to convince those.
So that's a fair answer. I mean, there are all sorts of ways that the process is set up to make it more difficult for someone like Bernie Sanders, and maybe there will be reform in the process to make it more democratic. I mean, he has benefited from caucuses which are in some ways less democratic than the primaries. But I think that a lot of the complaints on both sides hopefully will result in reforms in the way both the Democratic and the Republican Party hold their primaries, so that it's more representative, more like one person, one vote, where the amount of people who vote for a candidate result in the number of delegates they get exactly, so it's not this kind of weird system. And I don't know, maybe the Democratic Party should get rid of the superdelegates. That might not be a bad thing. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I have one more clip I'm playing on the Democratic side of the 2016 presidential race. This is a clip of the Bernie Sanders interview on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. Like I said, you can watch the whole thing for free on YouTube, but you'll see I've shrunk down the video and superimposed it on a little YouTube video player page to sort of highlight the fact that you can watch it on YouTube, and there's a link down in the video description to watch the whole 11 minutes. This is where he's talking about an issue I've covered over and over again about whether Bernie Sanders should call himself a socialist, if that's like bad branding. And keep in mind, as I've always pointed out, the dictionary definition of socialism is government ownership of, or government or group collective ownership of the means of production, which is not the case for, like government paid for education or healthcare or Social Security or a lot of the democratic socialist programs that Bernie Sanders is going to talk about in his interview with Bill Maher, which I will discuss after you watch that clip over here.
That if he runs against you, the big word is going to be socialism. And at the risk of annoying you, because I talked about this with you before, I'm going to take another run at this. Socialism. It's not a bad word to your crowd. It's so funny. There's such a generational divide in this election. The people under 40, next to Adderall, they love you the most. Because they don't even remember the Soviet Union. And capitalism has not really worked for them. And, you are not a socialist in the sense that everything has to be socialist. You're like every other modern, intelligent country in this world, quasi-socialist. Right. Capitalism works for most things, but some things should be off limits to the profit motive.
Exactly.
Health care,
right.
prisons.
Right.
I would say covering the elections themselves. So can't we just make that case that
Sure we can. Sure we can. Look, okay. Number one, the greed of Wall Street in corporate America is such that there is now a profound anger against the top 1/10 of 1% who appear to want it all and could care less about the middle class of this country. But the second point that you're making is that I think most Americans understand that in the year 2016, it is not a radical idea to say that public colleges and universities should be tuition-free, that the wealthy and large corporations should start paying their fair share of taxes.
State universities used to be.
That's exactly right.
It's not like we're doing something that new.
No,
yeah.
That's right. We're going back to where we were 50 years ago.
Right.
Is it a radical idea to say that the United States should join the rest of the industrialized world, every other country, and guarantee health care to all of our people as a right? I don't think so. Is it a radical idea to say that we should not have a corrupt campaign finance system in which billionaires buy elections? Right. I don't think so. So your point is well taken. Look, entrepreneurship, et cetera, creates a lot of good things in this country and a lot of wealth. But the American people are entitled to know that they're going to have health care, education, decent housing. The basic needs of life should be there for all of our people.
Bernie Sanders, everybody. Bernie?
So I definitely agree with Bernie Sanders that none of those things he was advocating for are radical, universal health care or free college, what he was talking about, that's been a big part of his campaign, and even housing, subsidized housing for the poor, that's not even, none of those things are radical. But as I was pointing out before I showed the clip, none of those things are really socialism. They may be democratic socialism, which is what Bernie Sanders says he's in favor of, but socialism is government collective group ownership of the means of production. It's, maybe Amtrak is socialism because it's government ownership of the trains, or the post office maybe, or if in a single-payer healthcare system where the government owns the hospitals and employs the doctors, that would be socialism. But if the hospitals are private and the doctors are private, and even Obamacare, that's not socialism. It's just a way the government pays private groups that own their own means of production. But anyway, I guess like Bill Maher said at the beginning of that clip, it may be kind of annoying because I've talked about this over and over again, and a lot of people don't like my classic dictionary definition of socialism. But sorry, I studied history. I have a degree in history from an Ivy League university, and I know the history of socialism, starting, with the utopian socialists and the scientific socialists, and going all the way through to, communism and whatever. That's one of my pet peeves, because I happen to believe I know what socialism is. Maybe you disagree. You can tell me what you think socialism is down in the comment section, and tell me if I'm defining it correctly, and if maybe my Ivy League degree isn't worth the paper or whatever they printed that thing. I think it might be parchment, believe it or not. But I'm going to finish up my Bernie Sanders interviews, and that's the end of the Democratic side of the 2016 presidential race, the end of the clips. Before I get to this one clip on political correctness and liberals on campus, I want to show one very brief clip on Memorial Day. All of the different corporate media programs paid homage to Memorial Day in one way or another. And over on Meet the Press, as they went to commercial, they showed lists of casualties in various conflicts. I think this is supposed to be over the last year. This is something they did on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos all the way through the Iraq War and into the Obama administration, and now they do it like just once a month, and there have been fewer and fewer casualties. That's one of the good things. And they showed a bunch of casualties for Afghanistan, which in a way I thought was a little bogus because supposedly combat operations are over in Afghanistan. And then they showed casualties in Iraq, and we know there's been some casualties there. And then there's this weird kind of third list of casualties, and I couldn't quite figure out how these casualties were combat related or conflict related, but apparently they were, and I will discuss that briefly after you watch that 12-second clip over here. So Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Jordan, those are conflict-related casualties. I'm sure there's some story there that I just am not aware of, but I thought that was a little strange, and so I wanted, as well as pointing out that Memorial Day is a day that here in the United States that's tomorrow actually, and there's a 3-day weekend, so that we're supposed to remember the people who died in combat or otherwise in conflicts for the United States, and those were stories that I just don't understand. That's why I wanted to point them out. Maybe you can let me know how those people died if you know down in the comment section, or if I figure it out, I'll add it to the video description a little later. But I want to move on to, so like I said at the beginning, the last topic I want to cover with this one clip. This is from HBO's Real-Time Overtime. They take internet questions, and this is a live stream on YouTube every Friday night. I never catch it live, but this is the recorded version. And at the very beginning, the first question went to Melissa Harris-Perry, who used to have this great show on MSNBC, and there's this long story about how she lost her show, and apparently she wasn't treated well by MSNBC. I used to really like her show. I thought she was really intelligent, and she's a professor, and that's why this topic came up, I think, because it's about political correctness on campus. And what's really interesting about this clip is it's like the big fight that never was. Bill Maher's always talking about political correctness on campus, but for some reason he didn't want to take on this brilliant African-American professor who apparently has a different view of political correctness on campus from Bill Maher, as I will discuss after you watch that last clip for the broadcast tonight over here.
Melissa Harris-Perry, as a professor, do you find there is a culture of political correctness on college campuses that is stifling debate and learning?
I don't, but I do think students are...
There's no atmosphere of political correctness on campus?
I don't find that, no.
Whoa. Where do you teach?
I teach at Wake Forest University,
Wow.
but I do think the students are struggling with this, and I feel like...
Because lots of comedians won't even play colleges anymore because nothing's funny.
Oh.
You
That has not been in my experience. I mean, I was telling Wayne that I've got these 22 students, and we went to Iowa, New Hampshire, both South Carolina primaries, the North Carolina primary. They're Democrats and Republicans, and I would assign them to work for candidates, even if they didn't, if they're not from that party.
Wow.
And they threw themselves into it. So I had, Republicans working for Bernie, and Democrats working for Rubio, and they were very much into it, but they are struggling with it, and we don't have good language for talking to each other across difference. And I don't know that we're doing a good job in this country giving our young people good tools for having conversations across difference. But I think that's our fault, not theirs.
As always, nothing's their fault. First.
So, like Bill Maher made a little snarky comment there at the end, and he made a little comment there about how comics won't play at colleges, apparently. And that's been an issue I've covered several times, but I was really surprised that Bill Maher didn't take on Melissa Harris-Perry there. You think he was scared to take on someone who's so intelligent and so connected to the issues that he opposes so strongly? I mean, usually Bill Maher is willing to undertake those arguments. I don't know why he didn't in that case. Maybe and if you're wondering, he was dressed in silver because he did this weird new rule thing at the end where he pretended to be giving a commencement address in the year 2041, and that's what they would wear at 2041 commencement, apparently. So that answers that question if anyone's wondering. And that is, like I said, the last clip and the last topic I wanted to discuss on the program tonight. I apologize to the live viewers for the video and the audio being out of sync. I may have to upload a different version, the recorded hard drive version of this, so the web address, the URL may change between the live stream and the recorded version for the week. I have to check it out afterwards. And if you want to help support all the work I do, picking out all these clips and processing them and putting it together and broadcasting it every week, over in this corner of the video, you should be able to click on a little eye that helps you find a way to give direct funding, fan funding, if you live in, I think, 4 different countries, but not any other countries. Or down in the video description, I put a link to my Patreon page where I'm hoping by the time I get to the 2016 election, I'll have enough patrons to give me about $600 a month, which is $150 per show. It takes about 10 to 12 hours, so that means $15 minimum wage for me if you want to help me out by being a patron and supporting the work I put into all these Sunday shows. And then the videos I put up during the week, I guess those are just for free, like the Fox News bias video I made this last week on how they convicted this undocumented immigrant of murder before he has even been to trial, apparently. You can check that out. Check that out on my YouTube channel or on my Facebook page or my Twitter feed or every other place. Instagram, I think I just put a little picture of Sandy I took during the program up on Instagram, and it ended up on Facebook and Twitter as well for the Sandy fans out there. And hopefully I'll have time this week to put up some other edited, produced video. For the next several weeks, the time of the broadcast is going to be delayed, maybe 12 to 24 hours for various, I think there are a couple graduations and a wedding coming up in the next few weeks, so I am going to have to delay the show, but it will still be up. Just keep looking for it. I'll put up an announcement as soon as I know when I'll be able to do it, and so until I am able to do that next Sunday or Monday, or until I am able to upload some other video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.